Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of the Varghulf conversion. Today we're going to be doing the green stuff sculpting of fur. Now this video is going to be a bit longer than the last one because I want to show you the whole procedure of sculpting that I took. On screen is a list of all the tools you'll need if you want to do some sculpting for yourself. With that said, let's begin. So we're going to begin by mixing up some green stuff. What you need to make sure of is that there's no streaks in the green stuff when you've mixed it. Make sure it's a solid green. That way it will harden properly, there will be no soft spots in your sculpt. I'm using some greaseproof paper or baking parchment if you're from the US. This will stop the green stuff sticking to my tabletop. It also makes it a bit more manageable while I'm using it. So the first thing that I'm doing with the green stuff is to pack the model out so that I can build on it. So I'm just rolling it into sausage shapes and just pressing it into the model itself. That way I can then start working on the fur. You don't have to be neat at this stage, just pack the model out. Using a bladed sculpting tool, I'm just starting to carve in the impression of the fur. So just some general shapes of fur that flow along with the design of the model. That way I can start building on it, smoothing it, shaping it. When you're sculpting something like this, pay close attention to the way in which the model flows. If you do that, you can then integrate the sculpt together so that you can get a more natural looking model. As you can see, I'm also pushing the green stuff into the plastic. That's to get a smooth transition between the plastic and the green stuff. The last thing you want is a harsh line between what you've sculpted and what the original model is. So you can see my little pot of Vaseline that I've got there. The reason I use Vaseline is because it's an excellent lubricant. All you need is a thin skin of it on your tools and it will stop them from sticking to your model. Some people like to use water to lubricate their tools, which I think is a bad idea because the water gets into the model and then starts to pull it apart eventually. Some gross people also use saliva. I don't recommend you do that. Just get some Vaseline, it's not expensive and it works much better. Little by little, I'm adding more and more body to the fur. This will make the model look more natural, it also adds a bit of flow to the thing. Now I'm building up the back of the model, just packing it out with green stuff. I'm going to let that cure before I start putting any fur sculpting on it. The reason for this is so that I've got a solid base to work on rather than trying to carve into soft putty, which is not what I want to be doing because I won't get the detail that I'm after. It was at this point I decided I wasn't happy with what I'd sculpted, so I decided to just smack a load of green stuff over it and redo what I was doing. This happens all the time when sculpting, and you shouldn't be afraid of doing it. If you've done some work that you're not happy with, just get rid of it, go over it, fix it. It'll all be worthwhile in the end. So now I'm using the rounded end of the sculpting tool, and this is just to get a bit of a more natural feel to the fur rather than the harsh look that I was getting with the blade. So I'm just smoothing out very gently using that rounded edge just to get the effect that I'm after. One of the things you'll come to realise about green stuff is it actually has quite a long work time, but as it's curing you want to keep on working with it, because the more that you work on it as it hardens, the more defined you can make things look with your tools. If you just leave it while it's soft and that's it, you're going to lose that detail. And many people don't realise that when they're working on it. If I'm doing some sculpting, I generally set aside about 2 hours. That means I've got plenty of time to work with it while it's soft, and then make the definitions when it goes harder. During the definition process, I'm actually being really gentle with my tools. If you're not, you're just going to crush what you've done. So in the early stages, when the model is soft, you need to be pressing with a bit more force. Not too much, but just enough to give the impressions of things and shapes. Whereas when it's harder, to get that definition, that sharpness to the model, you need to be applying very minimal pressure. So I've left this model overnight to cure so that I can work on it some more on the back. One of the last things you want is to preemptively start working on a piece that hasn't cured yet, because as you're working on it you'll end up crushing all the detail you've made with your fingers. I've done this loads of times and I've had to learn my lessons. You'll note that I'm starting the sculpting at the edge of the fur rather than on the main body at this point. And the reason for this is because I'm actually going to be putting another layer of fur over the top from the back. This will give the fur depth and body and make it look more natural. When you're sculpting, sculpt smart. Don't try and just jump in an area that you think will be good. Try and think about how you're going to make this model look and what effect you want to achieve. As you can see, with just constant working, consistent working, this guy's really starting to take shape now, and he's really starting to look quite good. So now we're going to fill the hole in the waist, and to do that we're just going to put some green stuff in the hole, and we're just going to smooth it out using a colour shaper and an embossing tool. You're probably wondering why I'm even bothering doing this, because I'm going to be covering most of it up with greenstuff fur. And the reason being that some of it's not going to be covered, and I want it to look as natural as possible, so I don't have to mess about with it later on. You'll note that I'm using the small embossing tool on the fur, and the reason for this is, as it hardens and I planish the model, it gets rid of any tool marks that I've made with the knife. So while the model is hardening, keep working it to get rid of all those tool marks. Make it as smooth as possible. It looks very natural. It looks like it was made that way from the manufacturer, which ultimately is what you want to achieve. Doing this also softens off any hard edges that you might have. So in the case of fur, you don't want it to look jagged and sharp unless that's the effect you're going for. But with this, we want a nice rounded looking fur. If you've taken away any definition using the ball point, then just go back in with the knife and just reapply that definition. But only do this right at the end when it's hardening off, that way you don't leave any horrible tool marks. So I'm going to let this cure now, and then I'm going to work on the other side. It's essentially the same procedure as this side, so I'm not going to show it in this video, but this particular effect can be achieved on wolf pelts if you want to do something for space wolves, or if you've got a character with a cape and you want to add a mantle to it, then this is the sort of thing that you can do to achieve that effect. In the next video we're going to cover the wings. So how we're going to green stuff over them and how we're going to mount them to the body. I'm also going to do some sculpting work on the face and nose so that it looks more like a bat. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and comment. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and keep your eyes out for the next video that's coming out fairly soon. Thank you very much and bye bye.